Hello, everybody. We are going to talk about the anthropological or cultural perspective in understanding the self. Culture is defined as the customary beliefs, social forms, and material traits for a racial, religious, or social group. Everyone has culture, whether it is on a certain group, certain barkada, certain family, certain barangay, certain province, certain continent, or certain region. Meron tayong kanya-kanyang culture. If people will be hearing the term culture, lagi nilang iniisip na ang culture ay pambansa lamang. That should not always be the case. Meron sa certain family, merong culture na hindi natin makikita sa culture na nalakihan nating pamilya. Kung bumisita ka sa bahay ng kaibigan mo tapos may napansin ka na way of life or culture na hindi makikita sa family mo. For example, sa family ng kaibigan mo, hindi na pwedeng lumabas ng bahay paglagpas ng 10:00 ng gabi. Tapos, sa ibang bahay, meron pwedeng makalabas kahit anong oras. Culture can also be in a religious sector. You can also see culture on social levels. Saan natin nakikita ang culture pagdating sa social sector or religious sector? For the Catholics, ano ba ang culture ng Catholicism? Many Catholics do the sign of the cross. They go to church, they believe in saints, they light candles in praying, do the rosary. That's part of Catholic culture. Mga prosesyong, panata, Mama Mary, ayan, yung mga culture na kabilang sa religion ng mga Roman Catholic. For our Muslim brothers, they also have their own culture. They have Ramadan. In a certain period of the year, they have the Ramadan season. Yung mga kapatid nating born-again Christians, meron din silang mga kanya-kanyang kultura. How about for social groups sa isang barkadahan? Kultura ng barkadahan na yun na pumunta ng simbahan kada first Friday, or you have a culture between your group of friends wherein you hang out together every after major exams, or you go to mountain climbing every summer. Certain group also have the culture of believing witchcraft, gayuma or barang. It is a belief, social forms, and material traits that are common in a certain race, religion, or social group. Here in Philippines, we can say that the culture is strong and diverse. Since we have colonized by the Spaniards for 333 years, after that, we have been colonized by the Americans. Then here comes the World War II when we were colonized by the Japanese. Try to imagine ano ang mga kultura na napamana nila sa atin. That is why napakalaga ng konsepto ng kultura sa buhay at sarili ng isang tao. How does anthropological aspect impacts the self? The anthropological construction of the self, anthropology, is a science and philosophical description of the life form Homo sapien, the thinking man. Anthropology is the study of how we started, how we arrived now, also might be a prediction of what will happen in the future as far as human race is concerned. Do not be confused with anthropology and archaeology. Archaeology is the study of human history and prehistory through the excavation of sites and the analysis of artifacts and other physical remains. When we talk of anthropology, there comes the study of culture, traditions, rituals, norms, way of life. According to Ocampo 2006, the focal point of anthropology as a scientific endeavor deals with a man in the physical, cultural, and existential features with the purpose of gaining a deeper understanding of man's place in the world. Let's try to imagine ano kaya ang kultura ng Pilipinas kung hindi tayo na-influence ng mga Spaniards. Meron ba tayong fiesta? Ano kaya ang lingwahe natin? Ano kaya considering na some of words in Tagalog and Cebuano are from Spanish? How about the mga Americans or Japanese? If we were not colonized by them, what would be our culture and traditions? Those are the factors that we have to reflect. We have to introspect how this affect yourself. So what is culture? Let's dig deep. What is culture? Culture is defined by British anthropologist Edward Taylor as a complex whole, so totalistisya, which includes knowledge, kaalaman, beliefs, paniniwala, art, sining, morals, moralidad, custom, nakasanayan, and any other capabilities acquired by a man as member of the society. So ang lahat ng ito, knowledge, beliefs, arts, morals, and customs are acquired because a person is a member of a certain group. You can you cannot acquire human culture if you are in only one person in a certain society. How would you learn to communicate if you are alone in this world? Who would you know the idea of fiesta, the idea of religion, traditions, morals, and customs? Mankind is a social animal. We cannot live to the fullest alone. There is that hunger or need to look for a certain person or group wherein we feel the belongingness with one another. The need for belongingness is one of our needs. Therefore, anything that man invented or created, learned or acquired, agreed on or believed upon comprises the whole of culture. For example, the mode of dressing, the use of eyeglasses, the respect for elders, the paying of taxes, and the concept of marriage are just of the many examples of culture. There are different cultural influences that shape the self. Since culture covers all aspects of human endeavor, it is essential to classify them into three major components. The first component is the material and cognitive component. This connects the material into the culture. Example, Barong Tagalog, which represents the material component of the culture. Barong Tagalog represents a Filipino, Pinoy, or the Philippines. Let's say kimchi. That is a material component. We can say that kimchi is a representation of food, a Korean food. So that is an example of the material and cognitive component. We also have to consider that the material component of the culture pertains to all tangible materials or representations of culture inherited from the previous generation. Just like wearing the Barong Tagalog, we inherited in wearing it from our ancestors. How about the use of palayok? That is a material component. We inherited the use of pateri from our ancestors. Regardless of how modern the material is, provided that the inspiration of that material, of that something that we have inherited from our ancestor, then we can consider that as material and cognitive component. The next is the normative component. Ano ba ito normative component? This pertains to our legal and social responsibilities to the society or our culture. Social norms are classified into two. The first is formal and informal social norms. The formal norms refers to what has generally been written down and involves strict rules for punishments to offenders. Ito yung mga polisiya na dapat nating sundin. For example, Code of Conduct of Discipline sa isang student. So, nasusulat na yan sa ating student manual. The Philippine Constitution, that is a formal social norm. Nakasulat doon kung ano ang mga batas na dapat nating sundin. On the other hand, the informal social norm is kahit hindi siya nasusulat, meron tayong social responsibility to do it, such as paggaling sa matatanda, pagmamano, pagsabi ng po at opo. Though it is not something na nakasulat sa batas, it is not written, it is something na kailangan mong sundin. This has inner responsibility na alam mong kailangan mong gawin. The formal and informal social norms have perfect combination. Ang problema lang ng formal social norms, sometimes may exemptions to the rule lang kasi. Example, gumawa ng batas para sa no jaywalking at hindi ka pwedeng tumawid. Ganun ang batas. Paano na lang kung ikaw ay PWD at ikay naka-wheelchair? Hindi nakalagay sa batas na para kung paano i-assist ang mga PWD na naka-wheelchair. So, papaakyatin mo ba sila sa overpass na naka-wheelchair nga siya? So, we can say not all the Philippine law or mga batas ay absolute. May mga batas na may mga exemptions to the rule. Kailan naman naging disadvantage ang informal social norms? Because hindi written ang informal social norm, madali lang siyang labagin anytime, anywhere. May mga kabataan na hindi na magpo at opo at sumagot na sa matatanda. Since wala naman siya sa batas, hindi naman siya makukulong kung hindi niya igagalang ang matanda. Pero alam mo sa sarili mo na dapat kang gumalang. Hindi man siya nasusulat pero meron kang inner responsibility to do it. So that is the informal social norms. Social norms are classified into folkways and mores. Folkways are general rules of customary and habitual ways and patterns of expected behaviors in the society. They are popular norms as customs, traditions, paniniwala, nakasanayan, and all. For example, pagkakamay, that's part of our tradition as a Filipino. So what's the difference between mores and folkways? Ang mores is under ng folkways, kaya lang, ang mores is mas mahigpit ito because you have to do something for the welfare of others. Example, dito sa Pilipinas, bawal ang abortion. Hindi lamang ang nagpa-abort o nanay ang makukulong, pati na rin ang abortionista. So those are the difference. Sa folkways, ito yung normal na tradition natin, pero yung mores can be part ng tradition and customs. Alam natin sa Pilipinas na may mga nagpapa-abort at lumalapit sa abortionista. Pagdating sa more, nandyan na ang iyong focus sa welfare, sa security at kaligtasan ng taong bayan. So that's the difference between folkways and mores, and these two are classifications of social norms. Here are the explanations of the existence of culture. Culture existed at the same time that society existed. In man's effort to improve his status in life and the life of others, and his effort to endure his existence not only for his generation, but also for the generations to come, he made borrowing or imitation, discovered and rediscovered culture started when society started. Nagsimula ang culture nung nagsimula na ng may kasama ang tao sa buhay niya. Kung kailan dalawa na sila, kung kailan tatlo na sila, kung kailan dumadami na sila at doon na nabubuo ang culture. Culture can be discovered daw. Kaya daw ma-discover ng culture. Kaya daw hiramin o imitate or even rediscover the culture. Napakagandang idea na we are borrowing the culture of other society. Kaya lang, sometimes pag imitation and borrowing nag-lead na sa too much, yung parang nawawala na ang social and national identity mo. There are many traditions that we have imitated from other society, like during the New Year celebration, we have fireworks display. Fireworks are from China. When will imitation of culture be too much is when your identity is faded because of adapting other culture. Yung hindi mo nakilala ang sarili mo, ang pinanggalingan mo kasi unti-unti mo nang binago ang lahat ng pananaw mo based sa culture ng ibang bansa. How about a culture na rediscovered? Ito yung mga kultura na nakalimutan na, pero naibalik ulit. Example sa culture ngayon ng COVID, yung culture ng pagtatanim ng halaman. Mas dumadami na ang nagtatanim ng halaman sa kanyang-kanyang bahay. Yung culture na nakalimutan na pero ibinabalik ulit ngayon. Yung ding napababayaang scenic spots, naibalik ulit ngayon dahil sa kultura. Hindi naman kasi napatagal ang panahon, pamodern ng pamodern ang lahat ng aspeto ng society. Minsan naman, bumabalik ang kultura na yan. Ano ba ang kalaban ng culture? Ano ba ang factors para makalimutan ng tao ang culture? Of course, innovation, modern technology, products of science. Nowadays, the improvement of science and technology are considered essential means of social existence which most people today could not live without. For example, cell phone, computers. Before, cell phone is a luxury. it was a want. Parang hindi kawalan kung wala kang cellphone. Ngayon, it is very essential. It's like a person will have a difficult day pag wala silang cellphone. Now, we have the acronym na FOMO or FOMO, the fear of missing out. Yung hindi siya makapag-update sa social media, yung hindi siya nakasabay sa trend, parang may kulang sa kanya. So, for the existence ng culture, nahihiram, nagagaya, na-discover, naibalik, at minsan nawawala ang culture. Cultural change. How about cultural change? Cultural change happens because no society is in constant state. Walang lipunan na nag-stagnate. Walang lipunan na hindi nagbabago o nag-improve. Society continuously evolves from one period of time to another. Such evolutionary characteristics may be too minute that it is almost unnoticeable or too abrupt that it suddenly changes the lives of the people. Before, we have the habit of praying at 6 p.m. Lahat ng members ng family sabay-sabay na nagdasal. Ngayon, iba na ang ginagawa pag 6 p.m. Noon, pag 10 p.m. tulog na lahat. Ngayon, 12 a.m. 1 a.m. magising pa kasi nag-online games, Facebook, online class. So it is part of cultural change and we need to adapt it. Adapting doesn't necessarily means fully embracing it. We need to go with the flow, but also we have to act accordingly. Sa situation ng culture, there is a situation called cultural lag. Cultural lag means nahihirapan ang society na mag-adapt ng innovation. So ang society hindi makasabay agad sa mga pagbabago. So ang cultural adaptation ay medyo mahirap, challenging at mabagal. Saan common ang cultural lag? Ito ay common sa mga developing countries or hindi pa exposed sa technology or indigenous communities na hindi pa high-tech at hindi pa na-introduce ang new innovation. So, magka-cultural lag talaga. Of course, they can adapt, but not that very quick. Hindi ganon kabilis. A society cannot adapt in just a blink of an eye. For example, this online class. This complete online class was already adapted in other developed and progressive countries even before pandemic. The primary to tertiary education system here in Philippines have just adapted the online class. We have observed that there has been cultural lag. Nahirapan ang Philippines na mag-adapt kasi our internet connection is very poor. Our neighboring country, South Korea, has the fastest internet connection in the entire world, so they can adapt quickly. But it doesn't mean that Philippines cannot fully adapt. We can adapt, though we are experiencing cultural lag and we need time to adapt. The second mechanism of cultural change is a cultural borrowing, discovery, or invention. Cultural borrowing is a situation where one society borrows the culture of another society and used it as new part of the culture. Example, a basketball, we have borrowed it from Western countries. Even music, artists borrowed each other's style in music and they just create their own edition based from other societies' music. Is it bad? No. Bad siya kung kinopya mo na lahat. Yung nawala na talaga ang social identity as a person or as a society. Yung hindi mo na makilala ang sarili mo because you kept on borrowing the culture of others. Borrowing culture has positive side. We are acquiring knowledge, experiences, and exposure to new things. The negative side is if we are adapting too much, then your identity would be at risk. It must be emphasized that not all cultural change are beneficial to the people. Some are found to be detrimental or dangerous, although it takes time on the part of people to realize the detriment effect of cultural item. For example, the rampant use of non-biodegradable materials, which cause rapid deterioration of the environment, as well as the use of artificial contraceptives, some of which are found to have side effects on the reproductive health of women. Furthermore, the excessive practice of cultural borrowing may lead to the sense of xenocentrism, which, from the nationalist point of view, lead to the rapid loss of national identity. The social process of culture, assimilation, acculturation, and amalgamation. These are various ways of spreading culture. Assimilation is the process of embracing a new culture and regarding the same as part of the existing culture. If there is any similar culture that tends to overlap with the newly introduced culture, such old culture is being replaced with a new one. For example, the replacement of kangan and bahag as the mode of dressing of the Asian Filipino to barong Tagalog and sarong during Spanish period. Another example is the replacement of the Asian Filipino alphabet with a new alphabet adapted from the English alphabet. Acculturation, on the other hand, is the social process of embracing the new culture, yung bago na talagang culture. But this new culture doesn't necessarily replace the existing culture. The latter continues to exist, and in most instances, it coexists with the new culture. So nag-coexist ang old culture and new culture. One doesn't replace the other. Hindi napapalitan ng new culture ang old culture. An example of this is the adoption of foreign foods by the Filipinos who continue loving Filipino foods. Thus, most Filipinos who go abroad have adapted the food in the place but still crave the Filipino food, such as adobo and kare-kare, and when circumstances permit, would have this food served in a table. Still, another example is in terms of language. Filipino may be able to learn languages of foreign country, but never forget their local languages. Next is amalgamation. Amalgamation is a social process of culture pertains to the complete blending of two cultures, yung mix na ang two cultures, which leads to the birth of new breed of culture. This usually happens when two cultures are equally familiar and influential to the point that both cultures are merged, creating something new. For example, this is when a Filipino woman marries a foreigner. Their children would have a culture that is a mixture of two cultures, such as being conservative on one hand and liberal minded on the other hand. This may be in terms of the absence of power among siblings, but still remain the bonded relationship among them. So that's the end of our discussion of the anthropological perspective in understanding the self.